All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this daily lesson with Little Kids Rock. My name is Braden, and today we're going to be talking about making music in the style of Drake. And our primary tool for accomplishing this, actually, our only tool, is going to be GarageBand. So I'm going to take you right over to GarageBand and show you a track that I made earlier today that outlines some of these concepts that we're going to be addressing. So just have a listen.
Modern band, music is a second language. 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 Modern band, music is a second language.
All right, so you can already hear how a lot of the concepts from Drake's music are sort of emulated here. So I just want to jump in and see how we can get to this place. So the first thing we're going to do is create a new project. So let's create a new project. And the first thing it's going to do is ask us what kind of instrument we want, right? So we're going to choose a software instrument, which means that we're going to be playing instruments all built into GarageBand. We don't need a physical instrument out in the world to play. It's all inside the computer already. And you see it brings up a classic electric piano here and musical typing. Musical typing is really cool because I can use my computer keyboard like it was a piano keyboard and just type to play. So I want to start by setting a tempo for our project since that's extremely important. So let's just listen to the tempo that we have. You can see that GarageBand defaults to 120. Let's see what that sounds like. So that sounds really fast to me. I've never really heard a Drake song that's that fast. And again, we're trying to get closer to the music of Drake, right? So let's slow that down and we can just click it and drag. And let's try 90, see how that sounds. That sounds a lot better. Already I can hear it in my head. I can beatbox along with it and it just kind of feels good. Right? Okay, cool. So let's stick with 90. And I want to start by addressing one element of Drake's music, which is these sort of like big, sweeping, cinematic, jazzy chords that are always right behind his voice and the drums. And earlier today, when I was messing around, I came up with this chord progression. Really simple, just two chords, D minor and E minor. And those felt kind of Drakey to me in a way. Like they're not quite perfect, but it's a good starting place. And if you want to create your own chord progression, it's really easy to do in the key of C. You can just make triads, which are 3-note chords, just in this shape. You're just using every other key. Right? And you can do whatever chords you want. For me, I'm choosing D minor and E minor, okay? So the next thing that's important for us to do is choose a rhythm for our chords, right? So let me see. Let's play our click track. And I'm just going to play along with it and see what I can find. All right, I like that. I think that's really cool. So let's go ahead and record that. I'm going to click this big red record button and we'll be recording. 2, 3, 4. Great. So now you see I have this 4-measure loop. It stretches from the first beat of measure 1 all the way to the end of measure 4 to the beginning of measure 5 there, right? And what I can do is I can just take this and loop it, right? Because this would make a pretty short song. So I can take my cursor and move it to the top right of this region and loop it all the way out. And now it just plays as long as I want it to. So it just keeps on looping past this loop point forever and ever if I wanted to. Cool. Now that sounds pretty good, but actually, you know what? I think I want it to be a little more jazzy, right? Because I think Drake's chords tend to have this sort of feel that they're rooted in like old soul music and jazz music, right? So let's actually like delete that and try it one more time. But this time I'm going to add some sevenths into my chords, which, you know, we already talked about triads. What if we added one more chord to that? And again, we're just going to follow the white keys and skip over a note, right? So we're just using every other white key. And how much better does that sound? I shouldn't say better, I should say more Drake-like, right? So before what we had was, and now what we have is, great. I love that. So let's record that again. 3, 4. Great. I like it. So let's get out of musical typing. And again, we're just going to put our cursor in the upper right and loop it out, right? So that's something that we're going to do a ton. Let me get rid of this library window. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is timing, right? So my timing wasn't perfect, and it doesn't need to be perfect, you know? I think there's something to be said for the humanity of a part that's a little imperfect. But if we wanted to get really, really precise with our timing, there's a way to automatically do that, right? To correct our timing. So what we can do is double click on this, and you see this edit window comes up in the bottom, right? So we can see all of our notes here that we played in. These grayed out ones are from our loop since we looped it out. But what we can do to really easily correct our timing is select all the notes that we played and then go over here and you see this quantize function. Now, if you zoom in, check out our notes. They're a little out of time, right? If this line is perfectly in time, there's one note here that's early, there's 3 here that are late. But when I click this Q in the quantize function, it just snaps perfectly into time, right? So that's what quantization does, is it takes what you played and just automatically snaps it to the nearest beat so that everything is perfectly in time. So let's listen to what it sounds like now. Great. So that's great. Now we have a part that we like. It's looped out throughout the whole song. It's perfectly in time. The last thing I want to address here is actually the sound, right? So we have this classic electric piano sound, which I like the sound of, but I just don't know if it's totally Drake-like, right? So let's see if we can switch up that sound a little bit. So when I think of Drake, I think of these big cinematic synthesizer sounds, right? So let's check out our synth menu here. And I want to just keep it very basic. So let's stick with classics. And let's just go to our first preset, which is called Beautiful Melody. I'm going to click that and you see our classic electric piano here switches to that Beautiful Melody preset, right? And you notice it didn't get rid of any of our notes. Our part is still played, it's still looped, it's still quantized. But it's just no longer an electric piano. Now it's a synthesizer. So let's hear what that sounds like. Great. So that already sounds really Drake-like to me. I don't actually think we even need to explore these other presets. I think Beautiful Melody is going to get the job done great. So the last thing I want to do with these chords is address this idea that Drake's music has, it features a lot of the background instruments sounding kind of muffled or underwater, right? And I think that's part of what lends itself to Drake's voice sort of like jumping off the recording and sounding larger than life, right? So he's in full focus and everything else is a little out of focus in the background. So in order to get that sound, what I'm going to do is I'm going to employ something called a low pass filter. So to get to my low pass filter, I'm going to go up here to this knob control. And it's going to open our smart controls pane. We'll go down to the plugins and click the triangle to expand it. Now here's all the plugins that are already loaded as part of the preset, but there's an empty plugin slot here. I can click that. And what I want is in the EQ menu, the channel EQ. So here's our channel EQ plugin. And you can see that right here, this is our low pass filter, also called a high cut filter. It's called that because it's going to cut out high frequencies. And when I click that, it turns on and brings up this pink dot right here, right? And I can move that pink dot around. So let's hear what the effect is of cutting out high frequencies by moving this dot to the left. So I'm going to play our part. Right, so that's a common effect that you hear in hip hop music, and also EDM as well, right? You hear this all over the place in modern music. So this is a really, really popular tool and a really useful one if we're trying to get at that Drake sound, right? So let's try and find a place for this high pass filter that, the low pass filter that is gonna suit us and sound as Drakey as possible. All right, cool. I like it right there. It's nice and muted. And you notice I can also bring this up and create a resonant peak. If I take that to its extreme, we'll hear a ringing sound. Right? But if I bring it up to just right there, I just get this nice like sort of peak sound. Cool. So I think that's about it for our chords. I think those sound really good. So let's move on to our drums. So to get to our drum tracks, make some drum tracks, I'm going to go to the track menu, click new track. Again, we're going to use a software instrument. And this time, instead of going to synthesizer, we'll go to electronic drum kit, and let's just choose the first preset, which is called After Party. Now we can close that and close that. And we'll bring up musical typing again. And let's hear what this After Party. Okay, so already, to me, that sounds very Drake-like again. So I think, again, our first preset got us there, which kind of illustrates like how tuned in the GarageBand presets are to modern music. If you're trying to make music like a modern artist like Drake, GarageBand probably has you covered, and if the presets aren't perfect, they're going to get you at least in the ballpark of the sound that you're looking for like radio-friendly, radio-ready kind of music. And from there, there's a lot of possibility to tweak these things and make them your own, which I'll show you a little bit about later. But for now, I really like the sound of this drum kit. And so I'm just going to record this, but what I want to do is record it layer by layer. I want to start with just the kick drum, then just the snare drum, and then the hi-hat cymbal, right? And the reason why I want to do that is I want to be able to independently control them later. If I want to be able to say like, oh, I want to turn the snare up, I want to be able to turn the snare up without affecting the entire drum kit. And if I recorded it all on one track by just typing it in just right now, I wouldn't be able to independently control those different parts of the drum kit, right? So for now, let's just record the kick. So I'm going to hit record and just improvise, and let's see what we come up with. 3, 4. Okay, cool. So let's see. I'm going to double click that and let's see what we got. Okay, that's pretty good. It's still a little out of time, so let's go ahead and quantize that just to get it really in time. Great, I'm really happy with that. So I'm going to trim this back just so it's a perfect loop. You see we have a bunch of silence at the end here. So just like we looped earlier by putting our cursor in the upper right, if we put our cursor in the lower right, now we're not looping, now we're actually trimming this region. So I'm going to trim it back so it's right in line there. And you can see from where this sort of bubble ends and this bubble begins that these are sort of like the same length now. So if I wanted to loop that out, I can. Okay, cool. So now let's record our snare drum. And instead of going back to the drawing board and going back through the instrument menu and selecting After Party again, let's just duplicate it. So we'll go to New Track with Duplicate Settings, and it automatically brings up another After Party synth for us. I'm sorry, After Party drum machine for us. Go back to musical typing, and there's our snare drum. I think I want to make that a little louder. Great. So let's do the same thing we did with the kick drum, but now we're going to do it on the snare. 2, 3, 4. All right, cool. So there's a little latency that I'm experiencing between when I press the key and when the sound actually happens. So there's some of those were definitely out of time, so we're definitely going to want our quantize function now. So let's go ahead and hit that and just see where it got us. Okay, cool. So it's pretty close. Now that I hear the snare pattern, I think I might want to make a little adjustment to the kick pattern. So let's head back over there. Let's see. So I just deleted a note. I'm going to scooch this one. Let's see what that sounds like. That's pretty cool. I think I want this one actually right here. So you see, it doesn't matter how I played the notes. I can move things around however I want and just create the perfect part here in the editor window. Great. And now there's one snare hit that I'm missing that I want. So I'm going to take this one and I'm actually going to copy it. So I'm going to hold down Option and just drag it over here. And this is where I want it. So now listen to the ending here. I like that, how the kick and the snare drum are perfectly in sync for this little drum fill at the end. So we're going to record one more section here, or one more layer to our drum kit. So let's duplicate again. And this time we're going to do a hi-hat pattern. But instead of playing it in using musical typing, let's try and just draw it in. So instead of performing, we're programming. So I'm going to hold down the Command key, and you see how my cursor turns into this little pencil tool? So now if I click here, creates a blank MIDI region, right? So just like these have notes in them, this one has nothing in it. And I can double click that, opens up our editor window here, and let's find that hi-hat. I think it's right here. Yeah. So you see here how there's a piano here. This is called the piano roll on the left side. And I'm just going to take the row here, or the line that's associated with the note that I want to play, hold down the Command key to get my pencil tool, and click, right? And I can click anywhere to just get a little note. So I'm going to expand this. And look, there's a perfect hi-hat note, perfectly sized how I want it. Cool. And we're going to kind of make this like a trap beat, which is based on like a consistent 16th note pattern, just going all the time. So I'm going to draw in some 16th notes here. So let's hear how that sounds. Right? So you can already hear, like, that's a very familiar sound, right? And it feels very much like Drake. Okay? So instead of drawing in another 8, I'm just going to highlight this all, and again, hold down Option, that's your copy key, Option, and drag this out, and now instead of 8, we have 16. Right? So The last thing I want to do with this hi-hat is, I'm a little worried about ear fatigue, about the listener's ear getting a little tired of hearing these hi-hats just constantly throughout the whole song. So maybe I want to introduce a little more variation and mix it up a little bit. So what I'm going to do is copy this whole region, again, Option to copy, and drag it out. Now I have a new region here. But instead of 16th notes, since I want some variation, I'm going to make a triplet. So delete some of these, and now I have these 4 notes here that I'm going to be working with. First thing I'm going to do is just shorten them up, and then I want to bring them close together. And the reason why I'm bringing them close together is we're going to do this sort of rapid fire triplet kind of sound, and I want the quantize function to be able to snap these to exactly where I want them. So they have to be really close so that it knows, like, oh, okay, I get it. He wants them in this spot instead of this spot. All right, so now I've got tiny little notes close together. You can see how tiny they are compared to these are our 16th notes. And I'm going to highlight them all, go to our quantize menu, and instead of choosing 16th note, we'll go down here to the triplet menu. And let's just choose 32nd note triplet, just to start out with. And you see how that snapped perfectly into place there. You hear that sound? Cool. I love that sound. I want 6 of them, so let's copy these. And that's already a really familiar sound, right? If you're used to listening to hip hop music in the last 15 years, it's really based on this 16th note sound and this triplet sound, right? Cool. So now that I have that, I'm gonna just fill in the rest of the beat here with 16th notes. And again, I'm just copying, which is a super powerful tool. Cool. And I think I want another set of triplets. Let's just put it right here just for fun and see what that sounds like. So I'm going to take these triplets and again, Option to copy, hold it out. Cool, I love the way that sounds. All right, so I think we're in business. So you notice we wind up with 2 regions, right? Because we copied the first one. I want to make these one just so that I can easily have one region that I can loop out through the rest of the song. So let's select them, go to Edit, and Join. And look at that, now they're one. And I can loop those out. And I'll do the same thing with my snare, which I never did. By the way, it really helps if you name these tracks the right thing. Right now they're all after party, so you can easily get confused. But I can go here and just hit kick, snare, hi-hat, right? And if I want to, I can even change the icon here. So I can make the kick a kick drum or whatever, right? Make the snare a snare drum, make the hi-hat a hi-hat. Cool. Cool, I love how that sounds. I think my hi-hat's a little loud. Cool, yeah, I'm really happy with this. So the next layer I want to do is make a bass track, right? So I'm going to hit track, go to new track, software instrument, of course. And let's do a synthesizer bass. And let's see just what the first one sounds like again. Okay, that doesn't sound super Drake-like, so, it was bound to happen at some point. We couldn't keep getting lucky with our first preset choice. So let's try a couple other ones here. How about the edgy synth bass? That's probably a little too intense. Let's try this heavy sub bass. Okay, that actually sounds pretty Drake-like to me. I don't know if you can hear it, but let's try just playing along with this. I'm going to turn it up, and let's see if we can just mess around. think that sounds great already. And it kind of got a cool part going on too. I'm actually going to bring the master volume down because I see that we're hitting the edge a little bit. Okay, so let's go ahead and record this. I'll get rid of these windows so we can focus. Start at the beginning here. By the way, press enter key if your cursor is anywhere else in the project. Press enter and it just snaps right to the beginning. You can see right here. Or you can hit this key button. And I'm going to record that part. 2, 3, 4. All right, I like how that came out. Again, I'm going to trim it back so that I make a nice loop length here. And you can use your other instruments as a guide. You see how 4 of these loops end right perfectly there. So again, I'm going to go through and see if I can quantize this. I don't want to do a triplet this time. That was just for the hi-hats. So let's see. Go to 16th note. Cool. So these were, as you probably heard, a little out of time. So what that means is that I actually played them so out of time that the quantization feature snapped them to the wrong 16th note. So they were so late. So I'm just going to drag those back. Great. Trim that one down to size a little bit. Cool. So this is a nice solid part now, and I can loop that out just like I did everything else. And I have this track now, right? Cool. So this already is a pretty fully fledged Drake-like production. So I could stop here if I wanted, but I'm going to do one more thing just for fun. I'm going to create a sample, right? And samples are something that are like totally like a huge part of hip hop history, right? Almost every great hip hop track has some sort of sample on it, whether it be a sample of an old soul record or a sample of just the rapper's voice behind them, right? And that's exactly what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a sample of my voice. So new track. And instead of choosing software instrument track, now we're actually going to choose an audio track. So I'll create that, and there is the track. You can see as I talk, you can see the meter move, so we know it's working. And I'm going to rename that Braden's voice. And for a sample, I just want a quick, like repeated little thing, right? So I'm just going to give it a shot and try my best and improvise something. So I'll hit record now, and let's see what comes out. 2, 3, 4. Modern band, music as a second language. Modern band, music is a second language. All right, so that's cool. Let's see if that's in time, because I know I have a little latency with my recording interface right now. Modern band, music as a second language. Modern band. Yeah, it's a little out of time. So what I want to do now is trim that recording. I'm going to trim it from the beginning. So do you remember how we've been trimming to control the length of our loops, right? I'm going to do the same thing by just trimming a bit from the beginning, getting rid of this silence in the beginning of the recording. So you can see how right here, this is our waveform, shows us where the sound is. I'm going to trim it right to the beginning of that. And now I have a little room to just move this into place. Modern band. So it's still a little out of time. Let's try here. Modern band, music as a second language. Modern band, music is a second language. Cool, I'm happy with that. And now that we have this, we want it to be a perfect loop. So let's cut here and expand it here. And now you see how it starts perfectly right here and it ends perfectly right here. So we just want it to go right from beat 1 to the end of measure 2, where measure 3 begins. And now we can loop it. So again, once we have the perfect size loop, that's when we can loop. If you try and loop a region that is not a perfect size, you're going to run into trouble, because what's going to happen, I'll actually show you. I can expand this here. And modern band, music as a second language. It sounds great for the first loop, and then when we get to the second one, watch what happens. Modern band, music as a second language. Modern band, music as a second language. Modern band, music as... Right, so it gets out of time as it goes along, right? So what we want is that perfectly sized loop that we can drag out, and it's going to feel exactly the same every time. So I could leave this as is, but one of the staples of Drake's music that I noticed is this tendency to take sampled voices and change the pitch of them, right? And this isn't unique to Drake. You'll hear this a lot in other rap tunes, like Kanye West music, right? Has this tendency to take these old soul records and pitch them way up so that the singers sound like chipmunks, right? I noticed that Drake has much more of a tendency to pitch voices down. So let's try and see if we can replicate that now with my sample. So I'm going to go to Smart Controls, back to our plugins area here, and this time instead of choosing Channel EQ, I'm going to go to Pitch and Vocal Transformer. Vocal Transformer takes what I'm saying and changes it. So I'm going to just take it down 5 semitones. I'll take the format down the same amount, just to keep it easy. And now let's play it and see what it sounds like.
Modern band, music is a second language. Modern band, music is a second language. Modern band, music is a second language. Modern band, music is a...
Cool. All right, I like that a lot. It sounds pretty crazy. And the next thing I want to do to it is I want to make it a little lo-fi, right? And lo-fi means sort of like sounding like the recording is a little messed up, a little distorted, raw, gritty, right? Almost like it wasn't recorded very well, or it was recorded on like a super old tape machine or something like that. I noticed this a lot with Drake, is this tendency to make things lo-fi. So I'm going to try and get a little lo-fi sound. The way I'm going to do that is I'm going to run it through an amp designer, so also known as an amp simulator. So this simulates the sound of running my sample, my voice, through a guitar amp. So let's hear what that sounds like.
Modern band, music is a second language. Modern band, music is a second language.
So here it is off.
Music is a second language. Modern band, music is a second language. Modern
And then turning it on.
music is a second language. Modern band, music is a second language. Modern band, music is a second language. Modern...
Cool, I like that. And I'm just going to mess around with some of these knobs so you can hear what they do. And try and get to the sound that I'm looking for.
Modern band, music is a second language. 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 Modern band, music is a second language.
Cool. So you notice a lot of what I was doing there kind of made it feel a little more in the background, maybe, like right when I turn it off.
Modern band, music is a second language.
Sounds very present, right? Very like sort of in your face. And when I turn this on,
Modern band, music is a second language.
it's a little more like pushed to the background. And that's the sound that I'm looking for, because I don't want this to be the rap, right? It's like just a short little repeated loop. So what I want is for the rapper to be able to come and put their voice on top of it and have this voice fade into the background, right? And maybe pop out when the rapper's not vocalizing, but for the most part, I just want it to be part of the music, part of the background. So I love how this sounds right now.
Modern band, music is a second language. 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 Modern...
So you see what I'm doing now is, now that we have this fully fledged production here, sounds a lot like Drake. I'm just messing with some of the levels and trying to get things to sit in the mix a little better, right? And this is another element of this that's totally creatively up to you. Is just like, how do you want these things to actually sound? Like, do you want the kick drum to be super present, or do you want it to be barely there at all? Do you want these synthesizer sounds to be like um, right up in your face, or do you want them to really be part of the background? These are things that you can consider while you're making your production, or you can save it for later and do it at the end of your production. But either way, it's important that you don't just keep the level that things are at, that you create a mix of your own. And other ways to make this your own are you can create new instruments that you would want to do, like take it totally into left field, like maybe put an acoustic guitar on there, something that you would never expect to hear in a Drake song. Maybe you can pitch the sample up instead of down. Maybe you can keep the original tempo that we had, 120, and make a really fast sounding Drake song. However you want, the sky's the limit, and GarageBand is such a powerful tool to be able to manipulate these different sounds and change it, tweak it, make things your own, right? And that's what I think is really important about this exercise. So I would encourage you to listen to the artists that you like and try and notice the kind of sounds that they use over and over and over again. The kind of sounds, instruments, sonic qualities, techniques, things like that sort of make them, right? And define their sound, right? And then you can go into GarageBand or in any other tool like it and try and like hone in on those sounds and figure out how they're done. But what I think is the most important step is, once you do that, once you understand what makes an artist sound like they do and you're able to replicate it, twist it and make it your own. Do whatever you want to do whatever you need to do. Don't stick to what Drake does, but do what you do. John Lennon from the Beatles said, good artists borrow, great artists steal. So I would encourage you to steal, but then the important part is, again, to bend that so it's yours. So that's the best advice I can give you. I hope this was really helpful to you. I think we made a great song, and yeah. So if you're interested in more videos like this one, you can go to the Little Kids Rock Jam Zone, or you can go to the Little Kids Rock YouTube channel. Check out all the videos that we have there. There's tons more stuff on digital music production and GarageBand and Soundtrap, and I hope it's really helpful to you. And have a great day. Thanks.